Welcome to Reel Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. I'm pleased to have with me back on the show once again my good friend Sarah Evans. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Hello, thanks for having me on again. I always enjoy being here with you.
And I enjoy having you. And I feel like sometimes this is the only way I get to see you because you're so busy
I
going to
know, sorry.
shows. Well, she's going to shows, raising kids, working, living life. So we're going to do holiday movies because I wanted someone to do holiday movies with me, and Sarah was game. And so I said, let's do underrated by Angela standards, underrated. And Sarah said, I haven't seen any of those movies. So how am I going to know if they're underrated? And I said, well, you'll have to go with what I think then, I guess. So we'll say these are Angela's underrated holiday movies, and that Sarah is my guinea pig, and she is testing them out for the rest of you all, viewers who may not have seen these movies. But I tried to pick stuff. It's not necessarily for kids. Actually, I would say pretty much none of these are probably for kids, and I think are under the radar. Not the typical, because everyone has seen Elf or It's a Wonderful Life, or at least mostly everyone, right? So we see the standard movies every holiday season. So I just wanted to bring some different ones to your attention. This is definitely more if you have grown-ups probably in your family than for little ones. To do a different one. It's harder to find underrated holiday movies for little kids than I think it is for adults. So I'll just say that. So I'll be
True.
very interested because I know for a fact that Sarah didn't love all my picks, but we'll go into these. All of these are available in streaming because we watch them all on streaming. So I'll get that out of the way. So we'll start with the first one, which I think is a masterpiece. Tokyo Godfathers from 2003, from the director Satoshi Kon, who tragically didn't live very long, but made some amazing animated classics, including Perfect Blue and Paprika, which are much more stylized than this one. This one's a little bit more straightforward in the animation, and it's set on Christmas Eve. Three homeless people who are living on the streets of Tokyo discover a newborn baby among the trash, and they set out to find the parents, and all these adventures and misadventures happen. The three homeless people, Jin, Hannah, and Miyaki, are totally different. Jin is kind of an older guy, unlike his name, has a drinking problem. Hannah, or Hana, I might be saying it wrong, is a trans woman who we don't really find out till later in the movie exactly why she's on the street. So that's a very interesting story. And then Miyuki is a teenage girl who's a runaway from home. And one of the things when this movie came out in 2003 is, number one, it was now some of the depictions maybe of a trans character might seem a little dated, but at the time, especially for an animated film, was very revolutionary. And also, Japan apparently has a history of kind of pretending it doesn't have a homeless issue, that homeless people don't exist. It's a cultural thing. And so it was also considered, oh, this is very brave to make a movie about homeless people. But really, it's ended up being about three kind of characters, misfits, and how the real meaning of Christmas spirit is found. So it ends up having, in my opinion, a very heartwarming message at the end. I am curious to hear what Sarah had to think of it.
Well, yeah, I have to remind myself a lot of when it came out, and what you just said about it having one of the main characters be trans, particularly in a Japanese animated film at the time, was pretty cool. Like, that's just not
Mhm.
a thing. By modern standards, I had a lot of trouble getting into it because they use a lot of really derogatory language to talk about the trans character. So it
Mhm.
was very bothersome to me from modern standpoint, right? And so I had to keep reminding myself, okay, I've got to stop to ignore that. So like, and kind of put that aside and see what else is in the movie. So I will warn, if anyone's really triggered by that, then maybe this film might bother you. Um, Otherwise, though, beyond that, I liked a lot about it. I liked that the characters, yes, they were homeless, and that came up from time to time, but it wasn't like the main focus of their story. It was really I liked the idea. It was just kind of random people who kind of came together as a little family. like
Hmm.
which is actually really big in the LGBTQ community too, right? Like your
Right.
found family.
Found family, exactly.
Yeah, and they were like a little found family and who bonded over this baby that they found. I thought that was actually pretty cool and a cool message for a holiday film. Um, I was very interested in like throughout the movie, there's a ton of just absurd coincidences that keep leading it along. And at first I was kind of like, that's a little much. And then I read about the movie later, and it was talking about the director did that on purpose, that they were trying to make a point about coincidences and how much they might, or it was like they created a little fantasy world where all coincidences type things might happen.
Hmm.
So that put it in a more perspective for me. It's like, okay, that's an interesting premise.
Yeah, and it's obviously like any Christmas fable, right? Going to have some over the top ridiculous things that happen, and there's magical moments, and that's what I love that he did is he put in elements we're used to in Christmas movies, magical elements, fantastical elements, strange coincidences. We see that in a movie like Elf, but he puts it in this urban realistic scenario of these three homeless people on the streets, right? So we're expecting, and they have gritty lives, and horrible things happen to them. There's a really horrifying scene where Jin is just beat up by some random teens just because he's there. He's just a homeless person, so they pick on him. Very gritty, very realistic. But then there's the magical moments, especially the end, towards the end, which I love, where the character of Hannah, does something that I don't want to give away, but it's a magical moment involved with the baby, and it's totally Christmas magic. And I love that it's her character that gets to do that too. That she has the big moment in the movie. So I think this is a gorgeous, in my opinion, it's one of the great holiday movies, and a lot of people don't know about it. It is definitely not for kids. There's cursing, and it's a harder subject. I'd say like teens would probably be fine though, but you'd also have to remind them, like Sarah mentions, especially they're not used to some of this language. Well, depending on what part of the country where they live, they might be used to this language. But it is offensive, but it's also the
Yeah.
way they talk to each other in a familiarity too. Like they're family, so they can kind of just rib each other and use derogatory terms. I think that's part of it too. So
That's true. Even the trans character even refers to themselves using derogatory
right, she's
language.
often says that about herself. So I think it's more
Hmm.
like that internal, the way me and my friends talk about ourselves sometimes, or how like with
Hmm.
girlfriends, I might use words that I wouldn't use outside of my internal sphere, to talk
Yeah,
about myself even, so
right,
so
right.
to me that was okay. But anyway, at least
Hmm.
did you like it somewhat at least, or
Oh, I
you?
did like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't love it. Like, I wouldn't put it among my top holiday films, but
Hmm.
I definitely enjoyed it. And especially like the more I've reflected on it since watching it, some of the themes that kind of came to me upon reflection, I've definitely liked it.
And this director, I would just say, if you haven't seen his other movies, they're visually stunning. Paprika, I saw on the big screen at Salem Cinema back in the day before he died, and Perfect Blue, just amazing animation. This one is a little bit more straightforward, but it's still beautifully drawn, I think. So definitely, if you're a fan of animation too, especially Japanese anime, check this out.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I would
okay,
definitely say that if you're an anime fan for sure.
yeah, okay. I think you've got the next one. I'll be interested to hear what you say about this one.
All righty. So our next film is called Rare Exports. Came out in 2010. It's a Finnish film. I'm not gonna, the director I probably would badly mispronounce, so I'm not gonna give that a shot. But it's from Finland. It's about it takes place in a really remote, snowy, uh, tiny village in Finland and around Christmas time. And there's some nefarious folks doing some secret grave robbing on top of a mountain, and they end up digging up or trying to dig up Santa, the remains of Santa, but it turns out to be much darker than what they expected. So this is a funny one. I was I didn't look up much about the film till I was about to watch it, and then I saw it was listed as horror, and I texted Angela. I was like, I don't actually like horror films. And she's like, well, give it a shot. It's not like traditional horror, right?
Hmm.
So and you were right. It's I wouldn't
It's a
even
campy horror, I would
it's
say, if
like
it's even horror.
campy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like campy creepy.
yeah,
Like I wouldn't call it necessarily horror.
yeah.
But let's
I
just
don't.
say the Santa that they dig up is terrifying, murderous kind.
Not just Jolly Saint Nick.
Think more Krampus
Yes,
is
yes, yes, exactly.
than American style Santa. So definitely like I don't even know what to call the film. It is kind of a Christmas horror film, but I don't even want to say horror because that doesn't really
No,
describe
and that's
it.
why when you
But
said it's described as horror, I was like, because I knew you didn't like horror that much, so but that would be something like Black Christmas, or even there is a movie called Krampus that's actually more of a horror. So
right,
yeah,
right.
I would call this more like campy cult movie than anything. Yeah.
So yeah, so for a while watching it, I couldn't decide what to make of it. It was just so odd.
Hmm.
And then by the end though, I decided I really liked it.
Okay, good. I thought you would actually like this one. That's why I
I
was like, give it a
did.
chance. Yeah,
It was
yeah,
just
yeah.
so different. I've never seen, like I said, I don't watch horror films, and I definitely hadn't seen a like more horrid themed Christmas film. So it just was like a lot of unexpected stuff. But I loved it. I mean, I loved a lot about it. It just like it's got this main character who's this kid who ends up being an action hero by the end.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm not really giving much away. It's
No,
kind of,
no.
you see it coming. Um, but it almost feels like parody levels of action hero movie, but it's totally serious about it. Like
Hmm.
it's not like, look, we're parodying it. No,
No.
it's like a serious thing, and I kind of liked that a lot. And the story's just so quirky.
Quirky, that's a
It
good
was
way to describe this movie. Not horror,
quirky,
quirky. It is
quirky.
it's a quirk to the ninth degree. This movie shows, by the way, for our viewers out there, every year at the Dark Side Cinema in Corvallis. It's the owner, Paul
Oh,
Turner, is one of his favorite Christmas movies. So that gives you an idea. If Paul's been on the show before, he has a very dark sense of humor. So that gives you an idea of
okay.
the humor. I have to say, in the last episode I taped with Chris Andreessen, we reviewed an Australian movie, and I said, "What is wrong with the Australians? They are so weird and effed up, and they're so dark." So I will now say that also about like I wouldn't say all Scandinavian, but I'd say Finnish and Icelandic because I'd say I've seen some Icelandic films that have this
Me
kind of
too.
humor, have that kind of dark humor. The father in this movie, I don't know if he says more than like 6 lines the entire movie. He's like a very gruff guy, and he's infuriating because the thing this movie has, it's a theme that you also see in other more mainstream movies, is nobody listening to children. So like the kids
Yes.
know what's going on very early. They understand what's
Hmm.
happened. The adults spend the whole movie trying to figure out why everyone's disappearing. That Santa's going
Or
around
not
killing
caring,
and not
right?
or not caring.
They
Either
just ran
way.
off.
Yeah, like a child disappears and everyone, and even his own dad's like, he'll turn up later. And the other kid is like trying to tell him, no, like something horrible has happened and nobody will listen to them, which is like a common, like kid movie theme, right? Like the
Yeah.
adult. And then in this case, it's put in this thing of the holidays and this father and son who have, the son is like the sensitive type and his dad's this gruff guy. And all he wants, and this is what I found touching about, all he wants is his father's love and approval, right? It's just the two of them. And his dad is this type of macho, barely speaks type of gruff guy who really doesn't know how to communicate with his son. It's not that he doesn't love him, he just doesn't even know what to do with this sensitive boy he has. And so the fact that his son ends up becoming the action hero at the end, as you mentioned, there's some really die-hard-esque scenes, if you will, with him, is actually one of the great elements of it. It's not the father who saves the day, it's the sensitive little boy.
Yeah. One, there's a lot of weird things about this film. But one I'm going to point out now, is there were no women in the film.
No.
Like, where were all the women in the village? That was odd to me.
Yeah, it's all guys. Well, that area of
Yeah.
the world, well, they do mention the main boy. Like, I think you get the sense his mother had passed. And so that's why it was just the two of them.
Yeah.
Why there's no, I
Yeah.
mean, there's not that many characters to begin with. And then they're like
Right.
reindeer hunter. They were like reindeer farmers. They're reining up the reindeer for the stock for the year,
Hmm.
for reindeer meat. So maybe that type of work is inherently the men do it. I don't know why we don't see any women,
Maybe.
but
Yeah, that was odd to me too. But I did end up liking the film.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely those like a little darker holiday movie.
Yeah.
Not, I'd say call it horror adjacent. It's not really horror. It doesn't
Uh-huh.
scare you because it's actually very funny, most of it, but it's kind of creepy more than anything. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and if you're into like action films or like creepy stuff, not
this
your
is
traditional holiday fare at all, this is your holiday movie.
yeah, exactly. If you're into creepy stuff, non-traditional, that's good. That's a good
Yeah,
way to describe it. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So our third film is Happy Christmas. This was directed by Joe Swanberg and came out in 2014. And this one, I guess it stars Anna Kendrick. Maybe the other actors are known, but I only recognized Anna.
You don't know Melanie Linsky? Really? Okay.
Yeah, you know me, I'm not.
Oh yeah, no. Okay.
Um, but basically it's about a young, immature woman breaks up with her boyfriend and has a bad breakup and decides to move to Chicago to live for a little while with her brother in his living in his basement. The brother is married with a child and they have like a really what seems like a perfect little family going. And then she kind of comes in around Christmas time and definitely shakes things up.
Upends the family. Yes.
Um, I believe you said you picked this one because it's one of you and Julian's favorites.
Yeah, well, we watched it together. It's not like my favorite holiday movie, but he likes Melanie Linsky, and I
Oh,
liked the fact that he has a crush on her or whatever. He likes her as an actress too, and I liked it's kind of in that mumblecore genre of film, and Joan Swanberg's done a bunch of mumblecore movies, and that's unexpected to find a mumblecore Christmas movie. A lot of characters who are just kind of doing their thing, unmotivated. That's kind of the genre, the way it works. So it was interesting to see a holiday movie put into that genre. I don't know if it's one of my
hmm.
favorite movies of all time, but
Hmm.
I know you didn't like this one, right?
I hated this movie
Oh
so
wow,
much.
hate it. Oh wow.
I really did. I had to make myself finish it.
Oh wow. And what did you hate about it? I'm curious.
Oh, Anna Kendrick's character. I just, if she, yeah, I could never. She's very loathable. No, I didn't
Loathsome,
like, she's despicable. She just, she's very young, immature, very selfish, does not see her impact on others at all.
right?
And she's a train wreck. And she comes in and upends this nice little family and doesn't even see what the problem is.
Hmm.
And I know there's tons of movies that a character starts like that and then they learn a lesson and by the end they've grown and she doesn't grow. Like
No, I
by the
know.
end,
Like how
she's
real life
exactly
happens.
the same as the beginning.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could say that's more realistic, but
You
it's
didn't want
not
to
what I
spend
want to
time.
watch for an
Right,
hour and a
right.
half.
Right. You
I
didn't want to
was,
spend time with her, yeah.
God, I really didn't like her. And
Tiki torches and all.
yeah, okay. What I did like about the film, it was such an interesting style. You probably have the words for this, and I don't because I'm not a film snob. But like it almost felt like a documentary.
Hmm.
It was like grainier film. Um, like everyone's just kind of it's just kind of camera following them around. It's not really like fancy cuts.
Right,
It's more
right.
you just almost feel like you're just watching the family hang out in a documentary style. It
Yeah,
feels
and this director shoots a
yeah.
lot of his stuff that way.
Okay.
It's not documentary. They do a lot of improvisation in his
Right.
movies. So like a lot of
Yeah.
times characters improvise their lines, but he wants it to be natural. Like I'm just going to follow you around and you do your thing. There's less of a script, that type of thing.
I actually like that about it a lot. I mean, not surprising because I love documentaries. So I liked that about it. It was just I just really didn't like this character and it really kept me from liking the film.
She's not a great. I don't think I found her despicable as you did, but I do. She's definitely narcissistic and doesn't see the impact she's having. I thought the
Mhm.
relationship she ends up kind of having with the wife character, who to me, Melanie Linsky's character in a way is more interesting than the husband, right? Even though Anna Kendrick's related to, she's there for her brother. The fact that they are these two women, kind of similar ages. I think Anna Kendrick's character is supposed to be a little bit younger, but totally different parts. They're totally different parts of their lives. Melanie Linsky's character has got the kid and, the house, the husband, and Anna Kendrick's character is nowhere near any of that. She's just flailing around like a teenager almost still. But then they
Yeah.
both have some moments of connection in like some of their loneliness, I think. So to me, that's what I really liked about it. So
Yeah, it is interesting that they end up connecting. Like you just said, I think that's a good way to put it, that they connect over their loneliness, which the wife didn't even quite maybe realize she was feeling until she started to sit down and think about it.
Hmm.
So that was cool. I don't want to give too much away. I didn't like the way though that it influenced what she decided to write. That didn't feel real to me.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know.
Not for you.
This one
Okay.
was not for me.
Well, this is the hardest one to find of the group. So maybe if people are thinking of watching some of these other holiday movies, start with those because you might have the same feeling as Sarah on Happy Christmas. It's probably not for everyone. I liked it. Like I said, my husband and I liked it. We went in like not knowing anything about it and just watched it one night and we actually really enjoyed it. But it's probably not for everyone. And it definitely doesn't leave you with those warm, warm, cuddly feelings like some holiday movies do. So,
No,
okay.
it left
So
me wanting to kick her out.
yeah. You're like, I wouldn't have left her. I don't care if she was my sister, I'd kick her out of the house right away. That'd be it.
Goodbye.
Yeah, you're done. I can relate with that too. Yeah, it's hard when it's family. And I think that's
Yep.
another thing. Like, who doesn't have I mean, a lot of people have family that it might be difficult to live with, even if you
Oh yeah.
wanted to try to, try to give them a place to be. I think, like you said, she's not even aware that she's so awful to them or doesn't seem to care, which is part of the
Mm-mm.
problem. But we
Yep.
know a few people who have family members they live with, and sometimes that's the way it actually is, though.
Yep.
So we'll move on to our last film, which is by my favorite American filmmaker, modern American filmmaker, I should say, Sean Baker. Interestingly, on my previous episode, I directed his brand new film, Honora, which won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which I mentioned when I reviewed it because it was probably one of my least favorites of his films. That he's made other masterpieces like The Florida Project and this next film. Tangerine, which maybe not everyone is going to view as a Christmas movie, but I do. And when you type into Google list of underrated holiday movies, Tangerine often comes up right up there. So I say if Google says it's a holiday movie, I can say it's a holiday movie. The film follows a transgender sex worker named Cinderella, who has just finished a jail sentence, and she meets up with her friend Alexandra, who's another trans sex worker, at a donut shop in Hollywood on Christmas Eve. The central location in this film is the donut shop, which I love because that's actually a repeating motif in Sean Baker films. His film Red Rocket also has many scenes in a donut shop, different donut shop in Florida, or sorry, in Texas. Alexandra kind of lets Cindy know, though, that her boyfriend, while she was in prison, has been cheating on her. And so she kind of goes on an adventure that night to find him so she can kick the crap out of him. And so that's essentially the plot, such as it is. Now, this movie is the one I was already familiar with Sean Baker before this came out, and it showed at Salem Cinema, and it was a huge hit. Not financially, but it took the film world by storm because he shot it on an iPhone, which is not his usual style. He shoots all of his films since then on film, actually, 35 millimeter. But nobody wanted to finance a movie about two black trans sex workers, shockingly, shot on the streets. And he also needed to be able to shoot on the streets without getting permissions to shoot on the streets. Because usually films, if you want to shoot in locations, you have to get licenses and spend money to do all this stuff. So I needed something nimble. And it ends up working for this movie because you feel like you're literally following these two women around, like as if it was a documentary. So I've reviewed this movie before on the show for one of our Pride Month movie episodes. So it's not one that we haven't reviewed, but I actually it was an excuse to make you watch it, I'll be honest.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know it was filmed on an iPhone until the end. At the very end of the credits, it says that it's filmed that way. And I was really surprised.
Because
It
it
did
looks
not
good.
look like that at
No,
all.
it looks
Like
good.
it looks great. I even like then backed it up and was like just watching a few scenes. I was like, that does not look like it's filmed on a phone. So that was pretty cool. Uh Good job making me watch this film because it was phenomenal.
Oh, good. If you didn't like this, I was like, I actually told someone yesterday, if Sarah doesn't like Tangerine, our friendship might be at risk. But I wouldn't stop being
Oh,
friends with someone because I didn't like a movie, but I would question
yeah.
things.
Yeah. Oh, this definitely felt, yeah, I don't know if I would have called it a holiday film. It feels just more like a film that just happens to take place on Christmas Eve.
They do sing a Chris song though. Anyway,
That's
so,
true, they do. That's true.
but yeah.
But yeah, this was a good movie. Just There's a lot of interesting humor about it again, even though it's a gritty situation. The actresses, the two main actresses, wow.
Really great.
Wow.
Yeah.
They were so good. Especially, well, no, both of them. Both of them were amazing. I loved there was a lot explored in this about the nature of a friendship.
Hmm.
Um, and even though bad things were happening the whole time, even between the two main friends, you still felt and saw this love of friendship beneath it all. And in particular, I don't want to give anything away, but in particular, the very last scene is like so touching.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I loved that about it. And just yeah, it is quite an adventure. I think they must have walked like 100 miles in that film. They're just like constantly walking all over the
Right. And that
city in
sense of
high
movement.
heels and
I know.
stuff.
And that sense of movement. And you see this old part,
Yeah.
and it's shot in the most non-Christmas place you can shoot, right? So you're
Yeah.
in Hollywood on Christmas Eve, so it's sunny. It's
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
that you see the lights and, there's Christmassy things going on, but it has
Hmm.
that weirdness of LA. And I grew up in Phoenix. I know what it's like that weirdness of being somewhere that's hot and, palm trees in Christmas time. And
Right.
the two
Like,
characters,
yeah, it's
yeah.
Christmas, but it doesn't feel like
Right,
Christmas.
right. And it's also the friendship is what, forget the trans sex worker part like that. You're like, oh, that sounds, like, I mean, don't forget it. It's who, but that doesn't define them. The movie's about their friendship. And, you mentioned, Sarah, in Tokyo Godfathers, that in the LGBTQ community, it's often about found friends, found family. And this is a great example of that. Like they have each other, that's their family. And that to me was what was touching about this movie.
Yeah, I mean that the whole thing that sets off the adventure of the film, and you might say a lot of the unfortunate dramatic events that unfold, it's all set up when the one friend tells the other about the cheating of the boyfriend.
Right,
And you might be like, "Oh, what kind of friend does that?" But like honestly, it's really her friend. That's why she tells her, like,
right.
I'm worried about you. Don't get with this guy. He's bad,
Yeah,
right?
of course, she probably regrets it later because she doesn't realize Cinderella's going to go off and like spend the whole night
Right,
chasing this guy down, and she's like
right,
exhausted with her, and they
right.
fight like friends do. But yeah, it's very
Yeah.
funny too. Like
Yeah.
it's very funny. Like they are
Yeah.
just these characters have so much personality and so much vivaciousness and so many good
Yeah.
lines.
Oh yeah. I also really honestly connected quite a bit with Alexandra's character in the idea of like having a friend who always brings the drama.
Yes,
I've
all
had
of
that.
us. Yes, you always have. Everybody has
And
that
you're
one
like,
friend
oh
that you're like,
God, I
oh,
love you, girl, but you gotta
yeah,
bring down the drama. And then you see it coming and you're like, God, here we go again.
right,
But
exactly.
I better watch out for her because she's gonna be wild,
Yeah.
like I really related to that
Every
a
girl can
lot.
relate with that, the one friend that brings the drama. So, and she's
Yes.
got that with Cinderella. So, anyway, I'm
Mhm.
so glad yeah, I'm so glad I made you watch this one because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna squeeze it in there. So, Tangerine, when that was your favorite, so that makes me
It
happy.
was. It was my
Great. Well,
favorite.
we have to
Yeah.
wrap up. We're out of time, but thank you for enduring my holiday picks. I appreciate it. And it wasn't so bad. At least you liked most of
No.
them. There was
No,
only one. So,
it was really fun to like branch out and like I said, see some holiday films I wouldn't normally and I enjoyed that quite a bit.
right.
So
Ones you couldn't watch with your boys, but we'll try to figure out some ones for next year. I'll need to do some digging to find some family friendly ones. So thank you, Sarah, for being on the show. And thank you all for watching. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit that bell and subscribe. You'll be notified when there's new episodes. And thank you to our wonderful sponsors and to all of you out there. Happy holidays and have a great day and great movies. Goodbye.
bye.